Today we're going to start a new chapter and we're going to talk about properties of parallel lines. We're going to talk about special pairs of angles that are made, their relationships, and then we'll take some theorems and we'll start doing some math and making some things happen. So the first vocab word that we need to discuss is a transversal. So a transversal is a line that intersects two coplanar points or two coplanar lines at two distinct points. It's all fancy for a line that crosses through two other lines. So basically, I like to think of a transversal as a road. So let's say we have two roads right here, and we have a road going through both of them. That is your transversal because it has two intersections. If I look over here, however, like this line, that would not be a transversal because it only has one intersection. So transversal, I always think T for two. You need two intersections in order to be a transversal. If you don't have two, you're not transversal. You're going to need 4 highlighters. They all need to be different colors in order to do this. We are going to do some coloring. We have several special pairs of angles we're going to talk about. The first is what we call alternate interior. They are angles between two lines that are on opposite sides of the transversal. So for example, 3 and 5, we want to highlight those with one color. And 4 and 6, we want to highlight those with a different color. Every angle has a mate, depending on what type of angle I'm looking for. So we should never have, you don't want to say all of these are alternate interior. That doesn't make sense. In order to be alternate interior, you have to be a pair. Be careful about that. So if you look, they're both between these two bold lines. They're on alternating sides of our transversal. So these are transversal. They're on alternating sides. They're both inside two lines. The next pair of angles we have are same side interior. So in this case, it would be 3 and 6. They get highlighted. And then 4 and 5 go together. So use a different color for those. Where they are is really in the name. They're on the same side of T. So 3 and 6 are both on the right. And they're both in between these two lines. They're inside of them. So hence the name, same side in. You're going to need all 4 markers for this. You want to highlight 2 and 6. They are a pair. 3 and 7 are a pair. 4 and 8, 1 and 5. Now, I've talked about corresponding angles being angles in the same general region. Here's what this means. I want you to draw a plus sign. And what we have, as soon as we have 2 lines crossed, we have 4 regions. We're going to call this one the upper right. This one's going to be our upper left. We have lower left and lower right. So every time 2 lines cross, they form 4 regions, and that's how we're going to classify them. So if I look at angle 2 and its little group of 4, it is up and it's on the right side. So I would label this UR for upper right. So then I look down at this region, right? There's 4 more regions down here in this little group. Upper right is angle 6. So since 2 and 6 are both upper right, they're corresponding. Same idea for 3 and 7, except they would both be lower right, lower right. Lower left, upper left, upper left. So it's really important that we don't mix up same side interiors with corresponding angles. You always want to ask yourself, okay, what region is this angle in and what one's this in? For example, a lot of kids would pair up 3 and 6 together. A lot of my students think 3 and 6 go together. Well, 3 is the lower right, 6 is in the upper right. They're not the same, so there's no way they correspond. All right, we have 2 more pairs of angles, and then that's it. We have alternate exterior angles. There are angles on the opposite sides of the transversal and outside of our 2 lines. So in this case, they would be angles 1 and 7. You can see they're on alternating sides of the transversal. They're both outside these 2 lines. This is the inside of these 2 lines, and they are on the outside. We always have 2 pairs at least. The other pair would be 2 and 8. So I want to highlight those. Our next pair of angles are same side exterior. They are angles on the same side of transversal, but they're on the outside of the 2 lines. So for example, angle 7 and 2 are outside the lines, but they're on the same side of our transversal T. Same thing with 1 and 8. So we just want to make sure that we know where each of these pairs of angles are located. So if I ask you to name alternate exterior angles, you can name them for me. Keeping in mind everything is a pair, so there's always a mate to each angle. We have basically one big rule that we can break down into 5 little rules. So the big rule is that if a transversal intersects 2 parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. So we've already said that one of the rules is when we have parallel lines, a whole nother ball game. We can do actual math with that. If we don't have parallel lines, there's really not a lot we can do. 90% of the time you have parallel lines. So we're going to go ahead and note that corresponding angles are congruent, remembering that congruent is fancy for same. The same rule with alternate interiors. They are also congruent. Now we don't like to go off the picture, but I would say instead of leaving something blank, if you forget the rules, at least make a logical guess. If I look at 4 and 5, alternate interiors. They are both acute. They look the same. They probably are the same. So it's better to make an educated guess than nothing at all. If I look at a pair of same side interiors, say 3 and 5, one's obtuse, one's acute. There's no way that they're the same. So if they're not the same, they make 180. So they add to make 180, which means they're supplementary. If we look at same side exterior, that could be 2 and 8. Again, we have obtuse, we have acute. There's no way that these are the same, so they must make 180. If we look at the alternate exteriors, for example, 1 and 8, they're both pretty small. They both look the same. They are the same. So our rule is either all the angles are supplementary or congruent. There's nothing else they could be. It's one or the other. The way I like to remember is same side begins with S, and so does supplementary. So I kind of remember same side S. That might help. All right, so we're going to go through and label the picture accordingly, trying to use those rules. Right away, I like to look for vertical angles just because we've been working with them. So I'm going to right away just go ahead and say that angle 8 is 50. And I like to put my degrees in here. Well, if angle 8 is 50, then to get from angle 8 to angle 7 is 180 degrees. That means angle 7 must be 130. Next, I might say, oh, look at angle 50 over here and angle 6. They're on alternating sides of A, which is a transversal, but they're both in between C and D. So these are alternate interior, so they must be congruent. If angle 6 is 50, then to get to angle 2, make 180, angle 2 would have to be 130. Then I look at 2 and 4. They are also alternate interior angles. They're on alternating sides of transversal D. They're in between A and B. And alternate interior must be congruent. All these lines are parallel, so everything's got a relationship. With angle 4 is 130, and so is angle 3, because they're vertical. Angle 3 and 1, well, they're on the same side of B, in between B and C. So same in, same side interior, which is supplementary. Angle 1 is 50. But if angle 1 is 50, then angle 5 is also 50, because they're vertical. You named all 8 angles. So if you notice, all these angles are either 50 or 130. There's nothing else that they could possibly be. So when all your lines are parallel, you've got a lot of flowing together. There's a whole bunch of reasons as to why you can put what you put in those angles. All right, problem type 2. When you have a picture with a pair of parallel lines, the first thing I do is just shade over my parallel lines. There's just a lot in this picture, and we don't want to get overwhelmed. So we kind of focus in on the parallels. So those are your pair of lines, and you actually have 2 transversals. You have one on the right because it intersects twice. You also have one on the left. So what I do is I pick a transversal and I work with it. So I might pick the one on the right. Of these 4 angles, the 2 that are made by only the shaded lines would be y and y plus 50. They are tucked in the corners of all shaded lines. So if I look where they are, they're in between top and bottom. They're on the same side of our transversal, which means they're same side interior, which means they have to make 180. And if that's the case, then y is 115. So if y and y minus 50 went together, then obviously 2x and 90 have to go because there's no other angles to choose. So 2x and 90 also have to make 180, which means x would have to be 45. So shading can really help. All right, number 3, this is where things get hard because there are 5 lines going on in this picture. So there's a lot of stuff going on. You need to practice focusing in. So what I do is I look at the angles they're talking about, and I'm only going to shade the lines that make those angles. So for angle 2, right here, I'm only going to shade those 2 lines. Now I look at angle 3, shaded one of the lines, I need to shade the other line that makes angle 3. Just by shading in, it kind of helps us focus in on those 3 lines that we need. It kind of blocks out the other stuff. The last thing I like to do is I just kind of put little rainbows in the 2 angles they're talking about, just so I don't forget which ones I'm looking at. So they're asking you to name a pair of lines, a transversal, and classify the angles. What we're going to do is I always name my transversal first, since that only has one answer. Of the 3 lines, the only one with 2 intersections on it is the diagonal. So if we name the diagonal, we've got to find 2 letters that are on it. Q and S are both on the diagonal, so I'm going to use those letters to name it. My other 2 lines, they have to be the ones that go together. So it looks like top line has P and Q on it, so that's going to be its name. The bottom line has S and R on it. The last thing you need to do is tell me how 2 and 3 are related. So it looks like they're on alternating sides of the transversal, and they're in between the top and the bottom, so they are alternate interior. So when we do these problems, you want to do it in pencil because you're going to have to do some erasing and reshading. Now I'm looking at 1 and 4. So here's angle 1, here's angle 4. And I want to shade all those lines that are needed to make those 2 angles. So I'm focusing now on these three lines. So I'm going to start with the transversal. Of those 3 lines, the only one that has 2 intersections is the diagonal once again, which is QS. Means the other 2 lines we just have to name. So we have a PS, and it looks like we have a QR. Since I'm looking at angles 1 and 4, they are in between left and right side. They're on different sides of our transversal, so therefore they are, once again, alternate interior angles. So instead of giving us numbers for the last 2 angles, they're using letters. So I need to find SPQ, so that's this angle, and PQR, that's this angle. So I want to go through and shade all 3 of those lines. So we have a line up top, a line down here, and a line down here. And I am looking at this angle and PQR, which is this whole thing. I like to put arrows to show the whole angle. And forget about that little line that's there. That's not important. Of the 3 shaded lines, the only transversal is line PQ because it has 2 intersection points. That means the other 2 shaded lines have to be PS and QR. If I look at the 2 angles they're talking about, they're still in between these 2 lines. They're on the interior. This time they're on the same side of our transversal. So they are same side interior angles. So we're going to look at a more complicated picture than what we started out with, and you need to focus in on the angles that really matter. So if I look at 3 and 4, I'm dealing with these 3 lines because those make my 2 angles. They're on the same side of our transversal, but they're in between the 2 lines. So they are same side interior. Oops. Angles 5 and 6, here's angle 5, here's angle 6. If I were to draw the lines that make those angles, here's my 3 lines. The transversal goes diagonal. I have a top and a bottom. 5 is on a different side than 6, so they're definitely alternate. And on the inside of my top and bottom, so they are interior. And for our last one, 1 and 2, if I look at these, again, I'm going to shade the lines that make them. One's out, one's in. So I might actually want to use my corresponding in this little group of 4. Angle 1 is in the upper right. In this little group of 4, angle 2 is also in the upper right. So they are corresponding. A little hint, corresponding angles will be half exterior and half interior. That's a little way to remember what they are. All right, number 5, 6, and 7 says find angle 1 and then angle 2, and just kind of briefly explain how you got each one. So angle 1 would have to be 75 because angle 1 is corresponding. Both in the lower left, so they are both corresponding, which means angle 2 would have to be 105 for a variety of reasons. These could be same side interiors, or you could say 75 and 2 are supplementary. So let's just go with they're supplementary, since that's not new. Right, number 6, angle 1, again, 120 and angle 1. You have upper right if you turn sideways, and you have upper right again. 1 in, 1 out, so angle 1 has got to be 120. Or you could look at it this way and say lower right, but they're definitely corresponding. Which means angle 2 would have to be 60, again, because of that supplementary thing. I know 1 and 2 together have to make 180. And the last one, number 7. So this is a figure that we had seen earlier, almost. So I'm going to shade my parallel lines because that's what matters. And I can see there are 2 transversals. There's AD and BG. So if I look at AD first, the angles that go together that are tucked in these corners are 1 and 80. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, what's the rule? Do they make 180 or are they the same? They are same side interior, so they are supplementary. That means angle 1 must be 100 degrees. So we want to write same side interior angles, like 180. If I look at angle 2, that would have to go with 70 because those are the only other options. So angle 2 and 70 are on alternate sides in between the parallel lines. And they are alternate interior, which means they're congruent.